what I will say is that people's moral code is important, and that people who don't have an appreciation of God and people that aren't Christian have a warped moral compass because it's centered on a world. And going back similar to Sam Harris, but people that seem to think they understand what is good and bad, but root it in some abstract idea of what they think is good and bad, doesn't make much sense to me. For example, this whole trans movement, we see people physically harming children, but seeing it as a good thing. Abortion, we see people are killing babies and seeing it as a good thing. It's entirely warped. So unless you have an understanding of God and his laws, it's impossible to be good in the true sense of the word.
Absolutely agree. And with the trans movement, that is specifically the battlefront that my battle with my church happened on. We had a Girl Scout troop who used our building, and they called themselves a pride troop, as if being a Girl Scout had anything to do with hedonic homosexuality. And when I brought this objection to my church, I did quite a bit of research in diving into the scripture. And the Bible makes it clear that what's going on right now is Baal worship. What they're doing to kids in the name of the trans agenda is nothing short of Baal worship. Yep. It truly is basically line by line, verifiably that from a biblical perspective. It's not even a remote leap in logic or a remote reinterpretation. It's very obvious. And that's one of the reasons I've taken to a firm belief that what we're dealing with, I think woke, out of curiosity, do you, and I believe I know the answer, but I'm going to verify, do you believe in demons and demons acting overtly in the world?
Yeah, of course.
Agree. Okay.
It's probably the reason we're in such a mess at the moment, because people have stopped believing in evil. And on the flip side of that, I think it's what's waking people up, because there's so much evil around us that people are like, whoa, there is something greater than us. If there's so much evil, there must be good too. And I think that's a way that people are finding Christ right now.
Absolutely agree. So the reason I asked that question is just because I firmly believe that Baal is a biblical demon. People weren't just worshiping an idea or some made up pagan deity. I believe Baal is a demon, and I believe he simply rebranded himself as woke. And this cult that we're seeing in the world right now, it's a cult of Baal. And I think that the abortion, the trans agenda, the homosexuality agenda, and the all-out assault on not just the Christian church, but anything even remotely adjacent to God's principles and laws. I'm not going to say that conservatism and the Christian church overlap perfectly, because they don't, but there's a very strong overlap. It's at least 60-70% of the conservative party position lines up with a sound biblical standpoint. And I think it's no coincidence that the woke cult is assaulting those two things at the same time and often lumps them together. And it's and I look at that, and I look at people who are who are conservative atheists or conservative agnostics, and I wonder to myself, doesn't it make you curious that your sworn enemies lump you and me into the same category? Don't you think that maybe that's cause to investigate a little bit more? I certainly do.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of that Baal worship, as you call it. And I think the enemy is very clever. The enemy never makes himself explicit in that, come and worship Baal or come and worship Satan. It's more like, to be a good person, if you are compassionate, you will do these things. You'll harm children in these ways. And that's the way. It's all twisting of the truth.